This week, we took a look into the story of King Saul and the medium of Endor from the book of 1 Samuel in the Bible. This book of the Bible is named after Samuel, who was a prophet of God. Prophets are people who were chosen by God to give messages to his people. Others you might be familiar with are John the Baptist, Isaiah, and Jeremiah, to name a few. These prophets often gave wisdom and insight into how God wanted his people to live, what God was doing, or how people should behave in a certain situation. Samuel was a prophet during the time of Israel's first king, Saul, who we met in the story. If you joined us for the message this week, you know that Saul didn't exactly listen to the prophet Samuel, and things didn't really end well for him because of it. You might be thinking, this guy had a direct line to God's wisdom and still suffered a terrible fate. What chance do I have? Wisdom can feel tricky to come by. It's more than just an opinion or good advice. Merriam-Webster defines wisdom as the soundness of an action or decision with regard to the application of experience, knowledge, and good judgment. So where do we go for wisdom? And even more importantly, how do we train ourselves to listen to it? Well, the first part is a little easier than that second. The Bible tells us that we can simply ask for wisdom. In the Old Testament book of 1 Kings, we see King Solomon, the son of Saul's successor, David, receive an offer from God to ask for anything he wants. Solomon asks for, you guessed it, wisdom. God responds with this. So God said to him, "Since you have asked for this, and not for long life or wealth for yourself, nor have asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administering justice, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor there ever be." Like we talked about in the previous Devo, the Bible is God's letter to us. It helps us to understand God's heart for our relationships, words, actions, and so much more. Making a habit of reading the Bible can do wonders for pouring wisdom into our lives. Now, how do we train ourselves to listen to God's wisdom? Well, it's not as simple as knowing God's wisdom. Saul knew exactly what God wanted for him and still couldn't make himself follow it. Following God's wisdom is more about submitting ourselves to God's will, not our own. As we grow in our relationship with Jesus, our hearts reflect his heart more clearly, making it easier to follow his wisdom for us. But those growing pains are real. As you pray for wisdom, ask God to bend your heart to his, that you would recognize his wisdom as love rather than rules. He will be more than happy to grant that earnest prayer.